Your New England Patriots are having their 2025 organized team activities, the first of the Mike Vrabel era at Gillette Stadium this week. And our own Mego was there to hear and see what was going on. Drake's 4 interceptions, Will Campbell's incredible compete level, Mike Vrabel's commanding presence. It was all on display and so much more. We'll discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and what's next for the Patriots on the latest 6 rings and football things. Here we go.
Hey, whatever it takes, man. It's all about winning, all right? Win on 3. 1, 2, 3, win!
Celebrating the heroes of Foxborough's past.
Hannah with a good block. Look at Grover. All the way. Watch the block of number 73, John Hannah.
The champions of the dynastic era.
Adam Vinatieri booms a 48-yard field goal, and the Patriots are Super Bowl champions.
The Patriots of tomorrow.
We're going to remove entitlement from our football team. We're going to earn the right to be here every single day.
And the fans whose faith never wavers. This is 6 Rings and Football Things.
Full room at the moment. What are you looking for specifically with them in these early days?
Well, I think that when you say things like it's a full room, I would say that 31 other teams, that's okay, but 31 other teams are going to have 11 or 12 wide receivers at this point in time. So everybody's room is full. There's 11 or 12. I would say that the players that aren't available need to make sure that they're doing everything they can to stay up mentally and continue to work hard to get back. The young players that are coming onto this roster have to earn a role, and the ones that are returning have a clean slate to go and compete, and whether that's a carryover position.
There you have it right there, folks. Clean slate season is once again underway at Gillette Stadium. Mike Vrabel talking this week earlier to the gathered media outside on the practice fields of Gillette Stadium that wide receivers, be you brand new, recently drafted, returning from last year, an established veteran, and more, will have a chance to compete for jobs. It's a level playing field. And in fact, our very own Mego Donalini, who joins us here on the latest 6 Rings and Football Things, wrote about this very thing at weei.com this week, how the wide receivers are the most interesting part of the upcoming summer for your New England Patriots. But Mego, let's take it back a little bit. First, let's step back and just take a broader view of what's going on down at Gillette this week, what you saw, what you heard, and exactly how this feels, as Tom Curran and others have said, fresher, more urgent, and more energetic.
I would agree with all of that. This was really our first look at what Mike Vrabel's Patriots are going to be about. And what they're about is sprinting from drill to drill, very up-tempo, very physical, even when they're not supposed to be tackling, hitting. There's still had a couple guys ended up on the ground during these drills. And I think it was just a little taste of what's to come. Can they sustain that as they go through the long training camp ahead and a long season ahead through ups and downs? We'll see. That's going to be the main task for Vrabel. But I agree with all of that notion that this had a feeling of everybody's kind of juiced up. Everybody's ready to go. And I think the guys who are returning from last year looked mostly very well conditioned and very reinvigorated to be out there.
Yeah, before we get into the clutching of the pearls and being all aghast at Drake Maye's 4 interceptions and 8 passes attempted on the first day of OTAs, I just want to make a couple general observations from what I saw, reading the aggregators, pulling from the people that were actually there, then actually going to read what happened from your Phil Perrys and your Mego Donalini's and your Mark Daniels and Mike Dussault's, and watching some video recaps as well. To me, a couple of things that stood out were, one, everyone said TreVeyon Henderson is even just watching him move, they said that we haven't seen a running back as quick, just even in the
Spark plug.
Burst. Yeah, just like you could feel like, oh, so that's why everybody was freaking out. That's why Ben Johnson wanted to trade up for him. That's why it's a miracle he survived to 38. That's why the Patriots didn't trade out of that spot. So hearing that for me as the unofficial leader of the TreVeyon Henderson Appreciation Society, current meeting in place, Mego, love that. Morgan Moses, my God. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who with every soundbite, I know we talk about that a lot with Will Campbell and how Sling Blade, the Cajun tackle, is making fans and frenemies all across Patriots Nation every day. That dude just stands there. First of all, aside from the fact that he's a house, like an absolute unit, my God, he stands there and he's so composed. And when he speaks, I think you had put down in our pre-podcast notes, like Morgan Moses, captain written all over him. Are we kind of in lockstep that like before they slap a C on Drake May's chest and a couple other players, like Morgan Moses is going to be one of the motivational and emotional North Stars for this team to look to?
Certainly, and I think probably a steadying force, hopefully both on the offensive line with his play, but in meetings, he talked about how this group of offensive linemen are trying to very quickly become, the five fingers that form the fist to protect your run game and, of course, your quarterback. He is 34 years old. He's coming off an injury that he kind of ironically sustained against the Patriots last year, but again, he sounds like he's somebody who's very motivated to be out there when we talked to him the other day. And from his account, the team, or rather the offensive line group, is spending a lot of time after practices in meetings. And it sounds like he is a leader in a lot of those capacities, but also opening the floor for somebody like Will Campbell to share his perspective as a very young guy. So there's still a lot of questions about the offensive line and what they're going to look like on the field. We're only in mid-May, but I feel like at least between him, Garrett Bradbury, who we saw taking starting reps at center, don't know what his ability is going to be out on the field, but at least feels like a good leadership group there.
Yes, it does. And I also was very happy to see on so many different places to look, so much information to consume on a daily basis, let alone when you talk about it for a living. But there was Milton Williams. I think he shared on his Instagram, his IG stories, photos of him and Will Campbell battling. And they were talking about how it was already a thing. And like, he's testing Will Campbell, but he's saying back, man, this Will Campbell guy, he's something else. And then a lot of the reporters, Mego, to what you were saying about the line, everybody was impressed with both the ferocious Vrabel-like compete level of Will Campbell, even at an OTA. And also, even though he's got a little T-Rex arms that we all had are a little fun, they're not T-Rex arms. People talked about like, no, you see, like he sticks out, like just no matter what, like he's just such a big person and has just such size to him and presence. Like I can see now why the football side of operations wanted to draft him because of his ability, his strength, and his drive, but also the coaching and organizational side of the Patriots wanted to draft him because there's, I don't know, I hate to use this word, but at the same time, there's kind of like an aura or a certain intangible something that comes from Will Campbell, and other teammates are already picking up on it.
I'd agree with that. I think it's kind of hard to evaluate the personnel on the line on either side through these practices because it is shorts, it is no hitting. So it's like, okay, once somebody who is your size is coming at you, or a linebacker breaking through, how are you really going to hold your own? But at the same time, I would say that it's fair to say that the little sliver that we got to see one day of OTAs on Tuesday, most of the young guys looked really good individually. I'd extend that beyond Will Campbell. You talked about Travion Henderson. I thought that he really popped out there and he was getting some high level reps. He looked really good. Kyle Williams had the catch of the day from Drake Maye. It was a little outside corner. And I thought that in his individual reps over just doing drills with the other wide receivers, he looked very sharp, like just didn't look like a rookie to me in those drills. Again, those are not contact. Those are competitive, but they're non-contact drills for the most part. So I think that, and I know everybody is going to be looking at Chisholm, who also jumped out there a little bit. I think that these younger guys are going to hopefully make a big impact early. And you can only look at them kind of from an individual basis at this point in the schedule, because if you try to look at it as an overall, how is this position group functioning? I think it's just hard when there's not that level of contact that anywhere close that we're going to see in September.
Yeah, it's a general reminder. OTAs, organized team activities, are shirts and shells. Like, this is not, no one's hitting, no one's popping anybody else. Like, we save that for the end of July and early August. And then, of course, the Patriots will have their coordinated practices with the Commanders, I believe. I feel like there might be one other one. There's like, I think there's
The
a home.
Vikings.
Yes, there's a home and an away. The
Yeah, so
Commanders
the
and the Vikings.
Commanders come here, and then they go out to Minnesota to visit the Vikings.
Right on. That's where that's the most important part of the preseason. That's the most important part of forging the team, if you will, and putting them together and seeing whose compete levels really raise up to game day level and beyond. It's nice to hear also that the guy that we refer to here on the pod is Timeline King, Kyle Williams, looked quick. Like, look, you could see exactly why they gushed over him. There was that segment. We talked about this on a recent podcast, reviewing the Forged in Foxborough show with Mike Dussault from Patriots.com, how they spent a lot of time in the show talking about, showcasing the life of the scouts and what a grind it is. But when they saw Kyle Williams at the Senior Bowl, they fell in love and always had him on the radar. And again, he's not doing this against Patrick Surtain II. He's doing this basically against Jags and Air. So it's not that remarkable. But if he stands out and you see, okay, now I'm beginning to understand why they would invest so much in him. That's also a net positive as well. Did you get a chance to? Did you hear any more of what any of the other guys had to say about other players, Drake Maye, leadership, etc.?
It's just still, I think the biggest takeaway right now is that they're very much trying to find their team chemistry. It's still in the getting to know you phase because you have so many free agents at all the different position groups who are coming in. You have the young drafted guys, and then you have everybody who is returning from last year. So it was this sense of the defense is certainly a little bit ahead of the offense, as usually is the case in the summer.
I think
And
Pop
for
Douglas
the
even said that as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Gonzo kind of, when I was talking to Christian Gonzalez after practice, he was saying, already their defensive backs group is super tight, is how he described them. They go over to each other's houses, they go to dinner together. Like, some of these are naturally just further along in their chemistry than other groups.
Yep.
I think probably because of all the turnover and the new faces in the building, the offense is going to be pretty far behind the defense for a lot of the summer. Hopefully, by the time you get to those joint practices, it's looking a lot smoother than it looked earlier this week when we got a glimpse of it, because there was certainly some sloppiness out there. And I think some of that can be attributed to, one, these guys don't know Josh McDaniel's system outside of maybe somebody like Hunter Henry, who was in a version of it in 2021.
And it's a lot to pick up, as we've been told.
Yeah. And two, they don't know each other. They just they don't know each other's timing. They don't have their language down with each other, even, it seems like. And that's all right, because it's May. So there's a lot of room to grow. And I don't doubt that the system that they have in place will translate by the time that you get to the season.
Yeah, you don't have time to develop chemistry, on-field and off-field shorthand with each other, which is so integral, and especially in an offense that has a lot of like checks and look at me and all the intricacies and the variables and audibles of a Josh McDaniels offense. And we don't know exactly what it's going to look like now that he went through the supposed spiritual football journey, revitalized himself. I don't know if he, ayahuasca and went on a Rogers level darkness retreat, or just traveled and talked to people and put together like, altered things in his particular Jedi temple as well. We'll see. And look, I know everyone is dying to put, Efton Chisholm and Lan Larison not only on the Patriots, but already in the Patriots Hall of Fame. Chisholm, because he's going to be, a new pocket-sized Cooper Kupp who gets open inside in a phone book, a closet, or an Italian sports car. And Lan Larison, mostly for his style, because the guy looks like a 1980s magician, an adult film star. That, if you've seen him, he's wearing Rex Burkhead's number, which I love. But then you look over and he's got that stash in the perm, and you're like, I don't care what this guy does. I need him on my football team. And then people talk about his moves and his hands that are Travion Henderson level good. And of course, the running backs room could potentially be in transition because Ramondre has stepped away from football to take care of personal matters because he lost his dad. And Vrabel has talked about how he's going to reach out to him, work with him. He sees a big role for him on this team. So emotionally, I feel like these guys are coming together, and leaders are emerging, like you said, in the defensive backfield, where Christian Gonzalez even addressed the notion of becoming a bit more of a vocal leader himself.
I'm as most people know, I'm more of a low key, I don't really talk a lot type of guy, but, everybody leads differently. Everybody can lead, talking wise, everybody can lead through playing. So, I'm just going to continue to be myself, not change up or anything, but, just if there's certain things, the more I've been in the building, the more I've been around football, the more I'm starting to learn, the more I can, help the rookies when they have a question, help not even the rookies, anybody else that has a question.
So yeah, I'm not big with the talking and the words, but here's the ones that I can offer you right now. Hey, listen, as long as he's willing to admit this is who I am, this is how I conduct business and my affairs, and I'll do the best I can. And like you said, the defense is ahead of the offense, because more of them are previously in place, undergoing less transition, and they've had a couple more months together, Mego, because they got signed in March as opposed to drafted in late April. I think it's reasonable to expect this defense to look like it's been together for a while because of all those reasons, the talent level and the maturation. Are you expecting like Gonzo to make or take that next step as much as everyone else is this season?
I am. I absolutely am. I think that he had 2 of the picks off of Drake Maye in that first competitive section of OTAs the other day is not a coincidence. Being there in the right place at the right time, reading the quarterback. Again, I go back and forth because you understand that the defense is much further along than the offense is, but you're also in shells and shorts. So the defense isn't allowed to hit, and you would think that the offense sometimes would be able to capitalize off that more. I think for Gonzo, he's just going to be somebody who leads by example and leads by what he does. He's never going to be somebody who's Devin McCourty, who's coming out there and pumping everybody up. You brought back somebody like Jabril Peppers, who is in more of that very vocal role, I think. And then if you look at the rest of the defense, what's interesting, I think, is some of the free agents who they brought in, their connection to Mike Vrabel. And some of this, I think, is learning the expectations of what Vrabel is setting. And they got a sense of that in meetings earlier in the offseason program where he's cold calling on guys and you got to know your stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be pantsed in front of the entire group, at least verbally.
Literally dragging guys up on stage in team meetings, as we saw in the opening of Forge and Foxborough.
Right.
Just when you think Mike Vrabel couldn't be more football guy, he ratchets up his football guyness to another elite level.
Exactly. And so then you learn, we were even talking to Milton Williams, I think it was 2 weeks ago at this point, and he said that he got called out for not going hard enough in wind sprints. He looked like he was saving something a little bit because he knew that he was already going to make the cutoff time. So he's like, all right, I'll just kind of jog here at the end, and then got called out by Vrabel. And then we go into our pre-OTA meeting with Vrabel, and Vrabel says, first of all, that wasn't calling out.
No, yeah, that's not a call out.
Yeah, so but it's I think some of this is okay, here's the standard that Vrabel's setting, and whether it's in meetings or whether it's in practice, you literally, these guys from drill to drill, sprint, full sprint. From drill to drill. I was like, what is the first time they did it? It was after stretch. And I was like, oh, is that just a conditioning thing that they do after they stretch, they sprint? No. Every time the whistle blows and you go into the next period of OTAs, boom, it's a full all out sprint. And it's kind of you're like, what the hell's going on down there?
Yeah.
But I think it's the sensibility of, hey, even when we're in shells and shorts, there's got to be this urgency because they have so much work to do.
Yeah, no, it's a Herculean task to say the least, but it looks like a lot of them are already well ahead of the curve. And yeah, I think that's great that Mike Vrabel says, look, Milton Williams, we paid you $104 million. You are supposed to lead by example. And it's not just your paycheck that should be out there in front of everybody else. If you're going to be one of the leaders of this team, I'm not going to full blown no days off you right here, but you can't take your foot off the gas. You can't go light. Other people are going to be looking to you. If he's competing that hard, I need to be competing that hard. And if I want to reach my pinnacle, if I want to be my best, then I'm going to need to try to keep up with guys like that as well.
And I think it does. I think it does translate to one of the reasons I wanted to write about the wide receiver room coming out of practice the other day was there was just a drill where they were basically rotating one wide receiver going out on a route and another wide receiver acting as the DB. And 2 guys who were on the team last year got totally tangled up. And one of them just ate turf, just complete blowout, like jersey hanging off of the shell to the
Mhm.
point where one of the coaches was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine, fine." And you're like, "Okay, this is the level of compete that we have going on out here.
Yep.
Can they sustain that? I don't know." But it was nice to see.
All right, we can only put off talking about the Drake panic and why Joe Milton was traded away and what are we going to do with our broken sophomore quarterback for so long. As I just everybody relax, RELAX. I think we all should. Even if somebody like Greg Bedard is saying like, people, you're making too much of this, and he loves trolling Pats Nation and the football masses at large. Pop Douglas spoke to what he's seeing from Drake Maye and the kind of energy that he's putting out on the field thus far.
What's the process been like with Drake?
Man, it's been good. Like I said, he's becoming a leader, and he's been working. And he's working hard. He's been here. He be first one in, last one out. So.
Okay, first one in, last one out. I mean, we're used to hearing that from the days of old when banners were hung, and duck boats were ridden on as opposed to left for the tourists. So that's great to hear. But what do you like? What would you chalk up Drake's 4 picks in the competitive portion of practice out of the 8 pass attempts? To me, it seems like, it's a little obviously probably a little careless. Like, let me just test it. Let me just take this new fancy car out for a drive. He's learning Josh's system. And again, I'd like to remind everyone it's also May. So if we're going to experiment, if we're going to make mistakes, now is the time to do so, alarming as a 50% INT rate may be.
So I don't think it's all about Drake, and that's not to excuse the sloppiness, but I think that while the guys seem to understand the expectations from McDaniels and Vrabel about like who's on the field and um, the condition that they should show up in and all of those details, they just don't seem to completely know where to be out there at all
Mhm.
times. And again, this is still the learning portion of the offseason program. And so a couple of those were there's some Drake's throw it looking to the flat. It
Mhm.
seemed like somebody who was supposed to be out there wasn't out there, gets picked off. Just some miscommunications for sure. And I think a lot of it is just, I don't like all of a sudden people are looking, oh my God, is there going to be a regression from Drake? Are the turnovers that we saw last year, like we gave too much of a silver lining because we saw his natural athletic talent and there wasn't a lot of
Mhm.
that out on the
Mhm.
field, but now he has to do the decision making to put the whole offense on his back. Like, I do think it's so early in the program that there's no denying that first competitive segment was very sloppy and the turnovers were very noticeable. And at the same time, I think context matters, where it's easy to come out of this and say 4 interceptions in 8 attempts, like that is brutal.
What's he
Then
doing out
you
there? He's a
yeah,
mess. He's
you look at what's out
regressed.
there, it's like, in my opinion, one of the would have been one of them was a deflection,
Mhm.
and then one of the others, I thought it probably would have been a sack in real time, so I don't know
Mhm.
if you think that that's better or worse, but I think that there's just so much context that needs to be around those where it wasn't all Drake, it was an offense that doesn't know each other and doesn't completely know the system yet,
Mhm.
and so some miscommunications, some timing that's off, and hopefully they'll get there.
Yeah, I'm not really worried because first of all, you don't have your number 1 receiver out there in Steph Diggs, and hopefully he's well enough to participate sometime later this summer. Might have to begin the season on the physically unable to perform list. Perhaps not. Maybe we shouldn't be duped by all the videos we see on our timelines of him recovering at an absurd rate. Already out there now, looking like he's in midseason form, not 6.5 months into ACL reconstructive rehabilitation. Uh, yeah, last year he started just over half the season and didn't have a good line, was getting to know the receivers, sub level, and that's being generous and kind, level talent and playmakers surrounding him. Now you give him Kyle Williams. Now you give him Travion Henderson. Now Pop Douglas is a year further along. Now Kayshawn Booty should be more confident in his role. You've got the dependability of Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper as well. Like, things should settle down and he should have more time to process, read, digest the playbook, and then analyze the field as he surveys, looking for an open target or where he should scoot and boot, because I don't think it's going to be one Mississippi. Holy shit. Like, I think now it's going to be a little bit more like, have 2 seconds, have 3 seconds, while on the other side, the defense should be able to push the pocket, force the issue more, as opposed to 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi for opposing quarterbacks and defenses to rip them up. So both sides should contribute to a greater sense of calm for Drake Maye. And I think we should see a little more resolution in June when they get together for minicamp. And then by the time he gets to training camp, that should be enough time to digest and start to look like the guy who in flashes last year looked like an elite potential top 10 QB.
Right. And I would say that this part of the offseason program is about install and learning the different systems and your roles in it and understanding where everybody fits if they have a place. But also, so much of it is fine tuning your mechanics, no matter what position you play. And that's something that in the drills, for sure, it's like, okay, pull this guy to the side. And obviously, Mike Vrabel is incredibly hands on with this. But saying like, hey, the route that you just ran here, like you have this little hitch here, we need to stop that. Or you're popping your leg up, that's a giveaway that you're going to be the target here. Don't do that. Like there's
tells. You got to watch out for those tells. Exactly. Yeah.
There's this balance that the coaching staff is working on right now, at least from the perspective of being on the sidelines at camp, that you've got the big picture stuff, which can only come with reps and time. But then you also have the little fine tuning. And I think for people who are watching charting very closely, I'm not a camp stats person. I think the context just matters too much around it. But I think for people watching charting, some of it is saying, hey, like, are some of these physical tells or inadequacies, like the guys who are returning from last year, have they fixed those enough? Have they progressed enough? And I understand that criticism. For me, I personally can't see enough of a quarterback's throwing motion. Like, I'm not a quarterback coach.
So I know. We already heard about the hitch coming back. Oh,
so I'm not going to go into
never hear that word again, except when people talk about Will Smith movies, I'll be thrilled.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into that. But what I will say is part of the program right now is correcting those things and identifying. And I think sometimes when you think about last year, it's a question of like, aside from Alex Van Pelt, was there enough correction with, say, the route running among the wide receivers, understanding the spacing? So it's all just that balance in camp right now.
Yep. And once they finish up the OTAs in this delicious, delightful mid-November weather that we're experiencing in the run-up to Memorial Day weekend, the Pats will go away for a few weeks, and then they have mini camp in June, and we'll get our next taste, we'll get our next tease, and our next look at what Drake's like and how quick the timeline king is, and is Travion Henderson the answer? And oh my God, Milton Williams can't be stopped, and he and Barmore are going to be.
The other highlight, though.
Yeah.
The other highlight from the competitive period, your guy with the popcorn, Javon Baker.
That's right. I heard Javon Baker made a bit, and it was
he fought off his defender for a beautiful contested catch that made everybody go, "Well, this check the roster." Check the roster. That was Baker. That was okay.
That's why we opened with that Mike Vrabel line about all the receivers getting a chance, and that's why you wrote on .com about how this is going to be so fascinating to watch. Can Polk be salvaged? Is Javon Baker the legitimate outside big body, sure-handed X he was at University of Central Florida, who lost his way completely due to immaturity and so many other issues last year? Is Kendrick Bourne on this team? Can Pop Douglas really be the little guy in a McDaniel's offense that's open and looked to all the time? Who's going to seize those opportunities? I'm with you, because I think the safeties will be excellent. And it was great to hear about Craig Woodson, the 30-year-old safety out of California, already looking the part of a potential free safety. The cornerbacks are going to be borderline elite, and as long as Barmore is healthy, the defensive line is going to be an early 2000s Belichick era nightmare for opposing
Barmore
offensive
looked
lines.
Pretty great. It was something that our friend Tom Curran
Yep.
pointed out to me on the sideline. He was like, look how conditioned Barmore looks. I said, oh, all right.
Mhm.
I've been spending too much time looking at the red jersey and the other guys around him.
Yeah.
Gotta look at Barmore.
Yeah, that's just one of those like you love to see it type of things. All this is gonna progress, and after minicamp they take a break until the end of July, and that's when we steer into it. And next thing you know, August 8th is going to be here before like we blink our eyes, and it's going to be pretend season football. And
yeah, I will say and I wrote about this for WEI.com, where we started this podcast hearing from Mike Vrabel say everybody's got a full room. in the NFL in terms of 11 or 12 receivers. That's
Yep.
true, but not every program has invested in the quantity of their receivers.
Yeah.
If you think about who's trying out for maybe a max of, I don't know, 6 spots on the 53-man roster, maybe. You've got free agents who you brought in, and Steph Diggs, of course. Hopefully he's healthy and ready to go for week 1. And Mac Hollins. So those are 2 spots already
Keep
gone.
forgetting about Mac Hollins. That's right. He wasn't
Yeah.
really participating the other day, but people
Yes.
talk about what a mature, inspiring presence he is.
He's a free agent. He's
Yeah.
gonna be on the roster. And then you look at Pop
Yeah.
Douglas, he'll probably return.
Mhm.
After that, it gets interesting. So Kyle Williams, I thought maybe part of some they're still working through install. So he was certainly out there for some goof ups during that period where there were a lot of interceptions. But let's just
Yep.
pencil in Kyle Williams, 3rd round pick.
That's 4
who's
right
high
there.
upside.
Diggs, Hollins, Pop Douglas, and Kyle Williams.
So
That's
then
4.
where do
That
you go
leaves
from there? You don't know if you're going to be moving on from Kendrick Bourne, but
Bourne,
he's been
Booty.
a part of this system for years.
Yep.
Kayshon Boutte, who did a lot of work last season to improve himself,
Mhm.
still hasn't gotten over that kind of like 600-yard threshold where
Mhm.
he's a serious, consistent threat.
He's
And
over 50 catches, over 600 yards, and also a little bit of an attitude issue that led him to be a name that was floated during the draft time of possibly getting moved on from. And then you got the 2 kids they took last year.
yeah, and Jalen Polk, 2nd rounder, I think that they still see him as that Jacoby Myers type. And if you can have him be a consistent outlet for Drake, you want to try to make that work. You don't want to give up on a 2nd round pick after 1 year. So after that, you get to Javon Baker, you get to somebody like Efton Chisholm, who was
Patriots legend Efton Chisholm. That's
Yeah,
9,
and
10 guys competing for 5 to 6 spots.
Yeah, and so then you wonder, okay, well, then it starts even to become a competition for who's going to be battling for a returner spot on special teams. Like, it's not even just who's going to prove themselves to be able to be really explosive just anywhere that they're asked to do. And so they have a lot of quantity. The question is where the quality is at. And I
Right.
think there may be some real surprises as we move through this offseason with how the wide receiver room looks. That's why it's the most interesting to me.
So Drake, let's not push the panic button just yet, but let's make sure we keep our one good eye on him so that he grows out of some of those issues that he fell into, forced, or developed last year. The wide receivers room, very intriguing, with possibly 10 candidates competing for 5 to 6 spots, with a leader who has a lot to prove after he got paid a big old bag of cash as he recovers from offseason surgery as well. We're feeling really good about the defense thus far, but again, months away, and we were duped, tricked, hoodwinked, and bamboozled into feeling good about the defense last year. And look what that got us. Mego, great stuff, great thoughts, great observations. Guys, make sure you give her a follow at Megan, MEGHAN_Ottolini. And of course, you can always hear her on the weekends at WEEI, jumping in with us on the afternoon show on occasion. And of course, all her great work at WEEI.com as well. And you guys know where to find me as well. On the afternoon show, your old pal Nick Fitzy Stevens at FitzyGFY. We'll be back with more podcasts on the regular next week. We're going to be talking about flag football in the Olympics as well. What's up for the Patriots post Memorial Day? We'll be talking about some of the new NFL rule changes. This is kind of a nice little general football appreciation period, Mego, to get into. Then we get mini camp, and then we kind of step back and everyone pumps the brakes, gets a breath of fresh air, maybe an Aperol Spritz or a G&T. Next thing you know, it's the end of July, and here we go. All hands on deck. Any final thoughts, Miss Ottolini?
None for me. I'll be at OTAs again next week, so we'll see even more sprinting probably.
There's more OTAs next week. There's more OTAs next week.
Yeah. We got another
thought-
one on the 28th.
Oh, I did. My apologies. I had not checked further along the schedule. Oh my God, we're gonna have more OTAs next
I
week.
might be wrong, but I'll double check.
And you might be crazy, but you just may be the lunatic this podcast is looking for. All right, that's it. I'm not quoting any more Billy Joel lyrics. We'll be back next week with more thoughts. Everybody have a great Memorial Day weekend. Stay dry in the literal sense. Do what you want to do with yourself and your cold beverage hand whenever you get a chance. Enjoy the cookouts. Enjoy each other. And as always, we try to help you guys, the best fans in football, enjoy your New England Patriots. For Mego, this is Fitzy. Thanks for listening to the latest Six Rings in Football Things, brought to you by WEI Odyssey and 2400 Sports. We'll be back soon. Enjoy the weekend, and as always, go